And we're live. PJ, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good, Kaylin. How are you?
Good, good, good. So I got to hear more about this. You just mentioned briefly that you were about to do a trip to Texas, but it got canceled with some buddies. So I'm curious, was it Austin area or like were you like what parts of?
Like we had a whole plan. We were supposed to go to, I think, Cape Canaveral, Houston, Corpus Christi,
Okay.
Austin, and San Antonio. Is that can that be right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or the
Mm-hmm.
Alamo is, I guess.
Yes,
Um,
the Alamos in San Antonio. Yep.
oh yeah. So yeah, that
Yeah.
so that was our itinerary, but Corona, man.
Corona.
Yeah.
Ru- Ruining everybody's life.
Ruining everybody's lives. Yeah.
Slowly but surely, yeah. That's so. I wouldn't have expected you. I mean, you've traveled all over the place, but like that's like one of the last places I'd imagine you wanted to travel to. It seems kind
Yeah,
of
well,
random.
it's a group of friends from university, and we go once every 5 years. We go to a place somewhere abroad, and a group of us organized it. So this time I didn't organize it. I organized the first time around. Then we went to Vietnam, which is more my
Nice.
thing. But
Yeah.
I was psyched to go to Texas, but maybe
Nice, man.
we'll do it next year or something. I don't know yet.
That's really cool. So so let's see. So a bunch of stuff to talk about. I want to talk about your book, the CLI book, and stuff like that. But to start, like how do you like where do you see like the Magento community overall, like the state of the Magento community and or like open source e-commerce in general? Like I saw you've been doing a bunch of Shopware stuff and things like that. So like where like as like a small agency, a good sized little agency, like what do you like? How do you see the landscape overall right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll probably compare it to Shopware a lot because I'm deep into Shopware right now, and I see a lot of parallels there, but I also see a large number of differences. Yeah, so Shopware reminds me of Magento back in the days. Like when you and I started out, when the hackathons were still hackathons instead of contribution days. Um,
Right.
the good old times,
Yeah.
before any corporates like eBay
Right.
and
Right.
Adobe swooped it up. So the Shopware reminds me of that in the sense of it's uh, practicality for the merchants. So I feel like I mean we still do Magento a lot. Like I think around up to 90% of our business is Magento 2. So we're still a Magento primary focused agency, but we're looking around, and this is for the first time in our existence, which is almost 10 years, that we're shopping around to work with another e-commerce platform, and
Wow.
that's I think that's telling,
Hmm.
and it's due to a couple of factors. I think it's due to Magento's complexity in itself. Um, it's hard to onboard a new dev into Magento 2, although I would also say it's easier to onboard a new dev into Magento 2 than into Magento 1. Um,
Really?
yeah, well, it depends on where the dev comes from. So if they have solid understanding of solid design patterns, DI stuff like that, then they can get up and running
Composer and things
pretty
like
quick.
that.
Yeah, Composer. Yeah. So backend wise, front end wise, it's harder because the front end world is a lot more spread out, uses a lot more different frameworks. And then Magento, they took the wrong path with pretty much any choice they had in the front end. So do we do less or SaaS? Let's go with less, and SaaS ended up being the winner. Shall we
It's
go with, I don't know, name any JS framework, or with Knockout? Oh, let's do Knockout, and nobody in the world except for Magento uses Knockout.
it's almost like
Well,
a curse. It's almost like
yeah,
Magento. It's like
yeah,
like
it's
like and a lot
weird.
of the decisions like when they make them, there's rationale to why they
Yeah. Oh,
make
I no
them,
doubt.
and it's like a
The
reasonable
problem was,
decision. It just
yeah,
ends up so wrong, you know?
it was at that time it was a reasonable. I have no doubt that there were smart people there who made this call.
Yeah,
The problem being is that when they made this call, it was 6, 7, 8 years ago,
yeah.
and now Magento 2 is mature.
Hmm.
2.0 was a disgrace. 2.0, 2.1 was better. 2.2 was okay. 2.3 was great, and now 2.4 is great as well. But when they started building 2.0, they made all the wrong choices, and maybe it's a curse. But sometimes some things are also down to Magento. They made their own build system. Why not use Webpack? Even back then, Webpack was gaining popularity. Let's put it like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think especially in the front end, Magento has a lot of complexity, a lot of legacy. They wanted to make it easy for Magento 1 developers to start working with Magento 2, so they kept the XML layer.
Right.
They kept the block system. They enhanced it a little bit, which was necessary, but it got a little bit better. But still, for new devs, it's for new front end devs working with M2, still a big step.
Yeah. And then
So now
some of the thinking was like, yeah, like I remember when I looked into the layer, the like part of the build layer, the upward thing where it was like it's a PHP thing, where basically it's sort of like an in between thing to fill the gap between going full on like a node type deployment deal, and it was like, well, we have a PHP developer base, let's build something in PHP, and again it's like I can see the rationale behind that, but then you also kind of go, well, everybody kind of has to use Node and npm for so many things now, that you should have just gone that direction. Like that would have been the more straightforward route, and just tons of different,
yeah,
you know.
especially going in the build process. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, if you're talking about upward and PWA and having the separate front end and all the time it took to implement something like that, that's a harder nut to crack. We're not fully convinced of PWA in itself. I mean, what even is PWA? Are you going the PWA route? Are you going the headless route? Are you going the PWA headless route? So
What does that
we're
look
we're
like for you guys as an agency right now, as far as the type of work you've been doing Magento work for a long time? You have a great like established client base, and one of the things I like about you guys is that you're not like on this crazy growth, thing where you're trying to grow insanely fast and then you have to, do whatever the partner program tells you to do, and you got to get on all these hypes, so like you have this very sustained gradual growth model that I love. And so I'm curious, like, what are you seeing? Like, are people, your clients, wanting you to build PWA? Are you not even
no,
touching it at all, and you have enough work to do
yeah.
in just traditional Magento
Oh,
stuff?
we're definitely touching it. We're not stucking our head in the sand and ignoring it. But there have been, I guess, from the last 20 RFPs we got, one kind of mentioned it, like we heard this PWA thing. What's your take on it? So, and we're honest. We said, well, we have done a little PWA. It was a nice experiment. We wouldn't go on the full PWA route right now. It takes a lot more engineering, especially when there's a different front-end stack involved than we are right now used to. So we could do it if you want it. It's just going to take a lot more time and a lot more money. And this was like almost 2 years ago. So that was the status quo at that point. And we still feel like everybody at that point was in the same boat. Everybody who told them otherwise at that point was basically lying. So we told the client that, and they went another way, and they had a hard time, and they launched late. And so, not saying there's an immediate one-on-one relation there, but that's what stuck out for us.
Yeah.
So right now, clients aren't asking for it. The main problem with which PWA solves is speed. We're solving that in another way, which is totally satisfactory for the client and for us. So we're sticking with that for now.
Yeah. The Shopware thing is interesting. So I was kind of looking through some of your tweets this morning. That's one thing I like to do before interviews is like just like refresh cache on like what somebody's been talking about recently. And I saw some of the Shopware stuff you did. I saw the posts on your blog, which are almost all of your recent posts on what is it, P16
Are
P16R. Yeah,
are
yeah.
yeah.
And which I thought was really clever. And I
Stolen from
had,
Andreessen Horowitz.
yeah. And I had the exact thought that you just said of like, and I tweeted about like Shopware is it feels like Shopware is the new Magento because I saw the way you were working on it and diving into it, and you're such a Magento heavy dude. And there's so many parallels. It's like it's like so it's more sort of pure. It seems like more pure open source, like less commercial. I'm sure there's a commercial aspect to it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's totally a commercial aspect to it. They sell enterprise licenses just like Magento does. They're a ton cheaper though, so it's a lot more interesting for the European market, where the in the Netherlands, our top 20 web shops are like not even near your top 1,000 in the US revenue wise. So if the fees, like it used to be with M1, are the same for the Netherlands as they are in the US, then the total percentage of web shops that have get a great deal on their enterprise fees from Magento, that's a really small percentage. So the fees should be lower in Europe because the market is smaller. So
Right.
Shopware is a German agency, so they are EU focused, and so the fee is lower, their enterprise fee. They also have a little bit different model concerning extensions, but it's no biggie. You can totally do the free version. Like you can do it the same way Magento does. I think like 95% of all Magento web shops in the Netherlands are community web shops.
Yeah.
And also the ones that do like 1 million and above.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shopware is definitely interesting. It's a modern stack. I always tell people that the Shopware 6 stack. I'm solely talking about Shopware 6 here. So the Shopware 6 stack is what the Magento 2 stack should have been.
Okay.
It's Symfony based. It uses Twig. It uses Sass. It uses Webpack. It uses Vue for the admin. It's a headless architecture.
Got it.
It uses Composer, so all the nice things developers want nowadays. That's rolled up into this pretty sleek e-commerce system that Shopware is building. There's definitely no feature parity with Shopware 5, let alone Magento 2 at this point in time. But they're getting there. They're pretty quick at developing. Their roadmap is thorough. They stick to it. They deliver on time. So my biggest gripe with them is the community itself. It's
How so?
it's a very German community.
Uh,
In every aspect of the word German.
this is interesting. This is gonna get
Yes.
interesting.
So especially coming from a Dutch guy, right?
Now I just saw your post on your car going over 300,000 miles. So you are a fan of German engineering.
Oh, definitely. I am a fan of the engineering. Now the problem with the Shopware community is that it's German, as in the language. It's German everywhere. Right. Also, right. Their forums, they're completely German. Their Slack. From time to time, people in their Slack have to tell other people, hey, this is an English-only Slack, because the Germans are so used to talking German to each other. And Shopware being a German product, and they're not really used to having some people from outside of the German area that come in and ask questions. So you really feel that there needs to be a turnaround in community language-wise. There are very few blogs on Shopware 6 at all, let alone in English. Also, Shopware 5, the majority of the blogs are in German. On top of that, Shopware used to be a closed source system. They went open source at some point in time. I'm not sure when. So that culture is still there. there's not a lot of sharing going on. If you compare that to the Magento community is so incredibly open. They're vocal, they're sharing, they're holding Meet Magentos conferences all over the world.
Right.
I mean, we've seen each other a bunch of times all over the world. That's totally different from what used to be happening in the Shopware community. They're improving it,
Gotcha.
they're working on it. The big guys at Shopware are definitely aware of it, but it's
Yeah.
culture is hard to change.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because I've seen them, doing outreach, going on podcasts and social media and stuff like that, and it seems like they're working on that, but
Yeah.
that might take a while to kind of get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds super cool. The code base I'm the most familiar with now these days is Laravel. And I think you use Laravel a good bit, and it almost sounds like there's like in terms of the architecture, how would you compare like Laravel and Shopware 6? It sounds like the way you described it, like a lot of things are just a lot cleaner than Magento in terms of the way things are architected. It's just using a nice clean stack. Like one of the things I love about Laravel is like from version to version, things get simpler, not more complicated. Like I'll see a new API or interface for doing whatever, and I'll be like, oh, that makes sense. Like that's just, it seems even easier than the old way. Whereas like a lot of times that's not the case in Magento,
Yeah, all right. Let's step back. Comparing Laravel to Shopware 6 is in itself a false comparison, since Laravel is the framework and Shopware is the application.
Okay, fair enough.
Shopware is built on top of Symfony, so you'll have to compare Laravel with Symfony here, or something like Emios, which is a Laravel-based e-commerce system with Shopware. So let's do Laravel versus Symfony because that's the interesting part. So we use Laravel a lot in our internal development. We use it to build small services for our clients that we don't want to put into the Magento 2 backend anymore. We don't want to deal with all the UI components anymore. We just build a Laravel middleware application, hook it up to Magento through the API, and let it live there. So that eases our life quite a bit. Besides that, we also work with Symfony and Akinio and in Shopware. So we have a decent basis to compare the two. And I always tell people like Laravel is convention based and Symfony is configuration based. So Laravel is a lot of it is implicit, a lot of it is magic, a lot of Symfony is annotations, XML files, configuration files. Like I sometimes feel I have to do stuff twice in Symfony to get something working. Like the DI, the Symfony DI container needs a lot more explicit information on where it should inject and what it should inject. While especially Laravel is very easy, and Magento is also very easy with the DI container. So yeah, that's a big difference. And what you said about Laravel getting easier as the versions progress. That's definitely true on a high level viewpoint. So if you look at the APIs are getting easier. There are more methods every time. They moved everything to the ARR and the SDR like classes instead of all the functions that Laravel used to have. So they add a ton of shortcut methods, but it's still a lot of magic. Laravel is so heavily reflection based. And that's also one of the points people always point out, that Laravel is slow because it uses reflection. Well, I don't agree with that, especially with the PHP 8 just-in-time compiler that's coming up, but that's a different story. So Laravel is easier to step into because there's a lot of automatic stuff that's going on, and it just works at one point. I do have the feeling that when you get to a more complex stack and a bigger framework, it gets in the way a little bit. Because then you want to add, you want to sidestep something. And then you need an exception to the rule. And the exception to the rule takes more code in Laravel than it does in Symfony, because in Symfony, you already made it explicit like way back when, and then you change something, and then it's done. And then in Laravel, you suddenly have to add a lot of boilerplate code to make something work that is not dependent on the magic of Laravel itself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
I haven't
yeah.
used Symfony in a while. But I feel like it really like Laravel strikes the right balance between magic and just works. Because like a lot of times the problem with magical type implementation is you want to get something to work and like why isn't this working? Can't find the method, da, 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 da. And then it takes you forever to do something. But if the right stuff is handled magically and then you can still get stuff done, like for me that's the nice balance there.
Mhm.
But no, you gave a great answer on that. But so getting into the book that you wrote, this kind of takes us into that. So
Yep.
mastering CLI, how did that? What was that like? The process of writing the book and everything, was it a lot of work?
Well, people always say that writing a book is a lot of work, and it still is. But I think due to all the warnings I got, at one point I felt like, this is not so bad. But then I finished all the content, and then I needed to do all the craft around it, and that was a ton of work.
Okay.
So the book itself flowed pretty freely from my hands because I knew what I wanted to write about. I had spent a lot of time on setting it up beforehand, and I just needed to sit down and grind it out. But when the content got done, I just needed to find a way to generate. I did everything myself, so that was maybe my problem. If I would have gotten a publisher like O'Reilly from the start, I would have at that point handed over my content to them and said, okay, you do your editing and your distribution and whatnot,
Yeah.
and get it back to me, and then I'll see the big bucks coming in. So so then I did. So I did the publishing or the physical part of it. I found a company that does print on demand. I needed to set up a website. I needed to build the EPUBs and the PDFs, and I also wanted to have a Git repo that you could follow along. So if you
Right.
started in chapter 6.2, you can check out the Git repository and then using the tag 6.2, and you'll start from the code at that point in the book.
Mhm.
I wanted to automate that. I stole that from Fabien Potentier, who wrote the Symfony 5 book, where he did that. He called it book-driven development, where he built a script that reads his book, takes out the code, and builds the application that they're building in the book.
Right. Right.
So I thought that
So
was
it's all
cool.
in
So
one
that took me
place.
about,
So it's like a dry approach to like your code
yeah,
samples and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So I did that. So that took me the better part of like 2 months to have a command line tool which reads my ASCII doc source files from the book about command line tools, takes out the code from the book, and builds a command line tool. And adds all the code to the GitHub repository
I
as it
love
goes
it.
along.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty neat process, and I'm very happy with how
That's
that
very
worked out. But
meta. It's very
it's
meta.
very meta. Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was also a lot of fun, obviously programming that. So, but that took a lot of time, and then I needed to market it. But
Right.
I'm a developer, so what do I know about marketing? So
Yeah.
I just used Twitter and see how it went from there, and then it went above my expectations actually. But it's not like I'm filthy rich from book income right now. It's nowhere near.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's must have been a great experience. Are you thinking about doing another one or are you like
I
never
mean,
again
when I
kind of
was
thing?
done, I was like, I'm done, and I'm never gonna write a book again. But I have an idea that I want to rebrand it to Laravel Zero because now it's writing or mastering CLI tools in modern PHP. So now it's aimed at the PHP developer.
Mhm.
While about a third or to a half of the book is about Laravel Zero, which is Laravel's minimalist framework for building CLI tools that's
Mhm.
built by Nero and Owen Vogue. And that's a great little framework to build these CLI tools in. So I'm thinking about rebranding the book towards Laravel 9, probably the version that will come out after Laravel 8 that was just released, and making it a bit more Laravel 0 focused and rebranding it towards the Laravel community.
Yeah.
So by that time, PHP 8 will be released. So I'll update the book to match the code with PHP 8 and Laravel 8 or 9, and yeah, rebrand it. So I'm thinking of doing that.
And is there a lot of application to, let's say, Magento developers in the book, or is it kind of more aimed at like a Laravel audience?
Both. So I built up the book. It starts with PHP, Scratch PHP, writing a command line script that uses argv and argc to get the arguments, and you have to do everything manually, and that's more of
I
an
always get those
introductory
wrong,
chapter.
man. I
Me
always
too.
get those wrong.
Google it, paste it, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's more of an introductory chapter to makes you realize how hard it is, and then we move on to the Symfony console component.
Gotcha.
To let you taste the good stuff about the Symfony console component, so you don't have to do all the manually gritty work yourself. So Symfony console component is used in pretty much every PHP framework that offers a CLI. So
Right.
it's used in Magento 2, it's used in Shopware 6, it's used in Akinio, it's used in Laravel.
Yeah.
So if you cover the chapter about the Symfony console component, which is the main part and the middle part of the book, that's applicable to pretty much every PHP framework, especially Magento, Laravel, Shopware, Akinio, etc.
Right.
And then you move on into the Laravel 0 part of the book, which is about using the framework to build standalone applications and also to create a FAR out of them and to distribute it and stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
that's when you really want to go into the standalone application part.
Gotcha. And so, like, what are some of the, I don't know, what are some of the top things that, say, like a Magento 2 developer maybe isn't doing, as optimally as they could with command line stuff they're building? Like, what are some of the quick tips you'd give people?
Yeah, like the Symfony console component offers a bunch of components that a lot of people never use. So people pretty much only use the write len on the output interface. And
Sorry, what's that? The right.
Right, it's the method on the output output class
line.
that
Oh,
writes
yeah,
to the
yeah.
console write line. Yeah.
Right.
So they pretty much abuse that to show whatever in the console. But there are also like table helpers, there are form helpers, there are question helpers. So what we do in the book is guide you along writing example. So it will ask you for what is the task, what is the category. You get multi-select lists, select list, selectors with drop-down menus. You can do all that stuff with the Symfony console component. So that's
that's
there are
cool.
a lot of stuff in there that you can leverage in your CLI tools, which you build for Magento extensions, for example.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely abuse the write line method. That's like the only thing I use for sure. How do you do a drop down in a command line?
Well, it just re-renders the so you basically see a select box, and then when you select something, and then it will open up a new layer on top of it. So it just re-renders your console at that point. It uses the sections in Symfony console where you basically define a little area on your screen, like right here, and this is where the progress bar will come, or the table which get new data appended to it and then re-renders it. That's basically also what happens when you do like a menu with a submenu or a drop-down.
Gotcha. And then I noticed that you'd posted that you want to give the book free to like people that were in code boot camps, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna repost that. And then I was thinking about, I was like, wait a minute, there's like no code boot camps that do PHP, like they're all JavaScript or whatever. And I was like, that's kind of a bummer, that there aren't. Maybe there's an opportunity there,
I've heard of a code bootcamp here in my city that uses Laravel. So there are some maybe only Laravel based, because it's of course a pretty easy framework to step into when you're just starting out doing PHP.
Yeah.
So there's been zero response on that on getting the book for free.
Sucks.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I was hoping that there would be someone like, give me the book for free and I'll give it to my 20 students or whatever. And unfortunately.
It's so weird, man, because like we know how big the Magento market is, the sort of PHP market in general, even specific to e-commerce, outside of e-commerce, and it's like it's crazy that there's not more activity there. And I'm always thinking about like how can you onboard more people into the Magento community more effectively, and kind of each agency has their own ways of doing that, but it's like
I think it's not on the hype train anymore.
Yeah.
So back when we started elgentos, we were basically competing against every iOS developer out there, because apps were the new hot thing 10 years ago. Everybody
Mhm.
wanted to be an app developer. Then everybody wanted to be a game developer. But in no point in time, everybody who graduated from college wanted to be Magento, let alone an e-commerce developer. So I always feel like the crux is there. It's not a sexy or a very clear career path when
Yeah.
you exit university or college, and then you think, oh, I'm going to be an e-commerce developer. It's way more obvious to say I'm going to be an app developer or a game developer or yeah, what's out there.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. I think so. Speaking about like onboarding and stuff, I was talking to someone recently about how they're onboarding like new junior developers remotely and things like that. Now that during COVID, like there's so much stuff that has to be remote. Um, how's everything going for you guys with COVID working? Are you guys working remotely? Are you guys able to be in office now or?
When COVID hit, we decided to stay at home. So we did that for 4 months, somewhere mid-August. Then it felt like, yeah, we're here in the north of the Netherlands, which pretty much wasn't hit at all. So we felt comfortable going back into the office for the people who felt comfortable going into the back into the office. But we put a limit, so only 5 at the office at any given time, while we have room for 20. So
Gotcha.
we put a limit on it, and only for the people who didn't have a good workspace at home or stuff like that. But now we're into the second wave a little bit, so now we're thinking of banning people from the office altogether again, but we're not sure. But it's going pretty okay. We have desanitizers and everything. We have a pretty large office. We don't sit near each other. So at this point, it's like, if you're comfortable being at the office, you're welcome to come to the office. If you want to stay at home, stay at home.
Yeah. And have you guys worked remotely much in the past, or were you more in
Never.
office? Never? Yeah.
Yeah. No, we never did that. So this has been interesting, but we're never going to be a fully remote company. That's for sure.
Hmm.
That's not a thing. We don't really like it. We asked all the employees about halfway through, like, hey, what's everybody's thinking long term? Can we, let our lease go in the office and just work from home? And everybody said, I want to go back into the office as soon as it's safe. So
Hmm.
everybody here wanted to get back into the office, see each other again, socialize, just get out of the house. So yeah, that's so we're just going to do that when everything returns to normal. Until then, we're working this way too, which is fine. But for the long term, I don't. You, I do believe that like a middle ground between being fully remote and fully on premise, or however you want to call it, a middle ground is the worst, especially when there are like fixed teams. Like, this is the group that is remote. This is the group that's in the office. If that happens, one of the two will become a second-class citizen, and it's probably
Yeah.
the people being remote, because they're cut out from the talks at the water cooler, etc.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do some hybrid approach, then we'll do a relation. How do you call it? That team will be in the office on
Oh, like
Monday,
a
Tuesday,
rotation?
Wednesday, and then
Hmm.
rotation roster. Yeah,
Mm.
we're gonna do something like that, because we have never been remote, so everybody lives near here, so everybody can come into the office.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a luxury we have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I mean, it is so important to connect socially. It's funny because when you were going to say hybrid remote is the worst scenario, I thought you were going to say it's the best because like I think, but the way you phrased it made sense. If there's one part of the team that's always remote, one that's always in office, I agree that's the worst. But I think that like hybrid in the sense of you have a place where you can work in the office when you want to, and then you can also get your work done at home if you want to or whatever. I think that there's something ideal about that. That the productivity isn't tied to butts and seats, but the seats are available if you want to be together because everybody does want to spend some
Mhm.
time with their team and hang out and stuff and
Yeah.
Um,
So I think there are two ways looking at working remote. The first is, of course, COVID and health related. I don't want to go into the office because the chance of me getting sick is higher than it was otherwise. So that's, of course, a totally valid concern. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, just please stay at home. The other one is based on commute. So some of my employees live an hour away by car. Some of us, like me, I live 5 minutes, 2 minutes from my office. So for me, it's not a problem, the commute in itself.
yeah,
So if somebody wants to work from home because of the commute, I think we're going to have a little bit of a problem with that, because we want to see our employees for the social aspect of the work. And talk to them face to face, because we're used to that, and the employees are used to that, not just us as the owners of the company, but also the employees themselves. So a hybrid approach, and where somebody like that works at home for 1 or 2 or 3 days, is on a rotation, so they see all of the other employees at a certain point in time, let's say a span over a time period of 2 or 3 weeks. That's great. But a fully remote position just because of the commute, that's not something we're aiming at.
gotcha. Yeah. And how's COVID been for you overall? Has it been tough? Have you found like a schedule to kind of work for you for different things and getting outside,
Yeah.
staying active?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially the first month, of course, was hard because the kids couldn't go to daycare, so we had to do the rotation here. I worked in the mornings, and my girlfriend worked in the afternoons, and the kids were at home, so that was, of course, tough on everyone.
Yeah.
But once the daycare opened again and the kids could go there, we worked at home for a few months, which was great. Yeah, but I also was glad to be able to go back into the office and meet my coworkers there and do stuff with them. So yeah, COVID didn't really hit here in the north of the Netherlands. It's up now, but it's worse than in the first wave back in February or March.
Right.
So now everybody is getting a little bit freaked out again. So we might go back into self-quarantine in the upcoming weeks.
Gotcha.
Also depends on what the government is saying about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
all in
Yeah.
all,
Some of the
we went through it pretty good, company-wise as well. Although a lot of new projects were postponed because of all the insecurity concerning COVID and all the government plans in place to support companies.
mhm.
A lot of our RFPs or our quotes were put on hold, but the companies that were with us, the customers we already had like twice or 3 times as much revenue as they used to have before. So that also trickled down into work for us. So
Mhm.
yeah, we had a great couple of months business wise. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I saw like for me there was like a maybe like a 4 week period where a bunch of people kind of stopped hiring. People that were hiring were like, "Oh, we're gonna stop," and I thought it was gonna stop for a long time, and then maybe like 4 or 5 weeks later, people were like, "Ah, we're hiring," and it almost seemed like it was a relatively minor blip. But it's like it's unevenly distributed the way it's impacting different people, different sectors of the economy, and things like that. Um, but anyways, so you always have a lot of interesting side projects and things you're working on. You got any like you got any fun like side projects or anything you're hacking on? Raspberry Pis or anything?
Yeah. No, I'm doing in my spare time, which is none. Well, in the mornings, a few hours before the kids wake up, I'm building a SaaS product, small product for small kids, where they receive letters from a fictional character that tells them about travels across the world, so they can
My wife does that.
improve their reading already.
My
Your
wife
wife does
does that.
that?
Yeah, so she got this she signed up for this letter called Letters from Afar. And it's somebody that writes a letter from different parts of the world and it's like $6 a month and she signed up for our kids and they started getting the letter and they totally loved it. And then she
Yeah.
started writing one in Spanish and it's a fictional like brother and sister in Mexico and different adventures and there's like English and Spanish so it like teaches Spanish and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just doing the Dutch market
nice.
because
That's
I
so
totally
cool.
stole it, of
Uh,
course.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
saw this in the English speaking realm, and then I thought, well, I could do that for the Dutch speaking area. So I hired an illustrator to create the character. I hired
So cool.
letter writers because I'm not a good writer myself.
Yeah.
As in code, of course, I am. But no, for letters to
For
kids, I'm not the
fiction,
perfect.
fictional letters
Yeah,
to
for
kids,
fiction,
not so much.
that's not my thing. So I hired some writers to write the letters, and I'm building the application in Laravel to automate it at pretty much everything. Also, the sending of the letters, I use a company for that has an API. I just send a PDF there. And,
I
yeah,
really wanted to figure that out for my wife because she does it by hand, and I'm like, there has to be a way to automate this. Like,
yeah. I just have a
it's
company it's literally called mailman.nu, but in
okay.
Dutch. But it's they just have an API, and I send a PDF there, and they OCR it for the address, and they print it out on a full color or black and white or whatever parameters I pass on through the API, and then they put it in an envelope and mail it.
That's so
Yeah,
cool. That's fun,
yeah,
man. How
that's
many
that's a fun little
months?
project.
How many months in are you on? How many letters have you done?
Oh, I haven't launched it yet. I'm working
Oh, okay.
on the app itself right now. So I have all the content set up. I'm just working on doing a payment integration right now and making the letters go out on schedule and stuff like
Nice.
that. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah.
man. And you've been getting in shape
I also
lately,
have
right?
maybe I have an idea for your wife,
Okay.
which I'm doing. It's the PS. So the kid receives a letter and they can respond with a letter, and they just hide it under the couch or whatever to mail it to the back to the fictional character, and
Okay.
then the parent reads it, and then they use the website or an app or something to add a PS to the next letter.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay.
Yeah, I also saw this. I didn't think of it myself, but if she's not doing that, it's an extra touch point towards the
That's a
customer to ask for the
great
PS.
idea. That's cool. So they write their thing or whatever, or they write their response. They put it under the couch. The parent then
Yeah.
reads the response, reads whatever they wrote, and then the parent writes a custom response that you
PS. Yeah.
then inject into your PS in the next
Yeah.
one. Dude,
So
that's
let's say they were
that's
talking about, oh, I went to Thailand, and then the kid responds with, oh, we were in Thailand as well, and I was on the beach and I loved it, and I saw a dog there. I don't know, and then the parent can add a PS, and
I love it.
I had such fun reading about your trip to Thailand, and say hi to the dog for me or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, I love it. That's so cool. And you've been getting in shape lately. You've been losing some weight and exercising and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice,
I
man.
think I lost about 50 pounds in the last 2 years.
Really? That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, Phil inspired me, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. He kind of inspired me too. I've lost like 40 pounds and I have another
nice.
like 10 or 15 to go.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice, man.
But I'm doing a whole lot of cardio, but I have to switch now to doing weights and stuff. And I'm not really into that yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I started getting on my bike and running and doing wakeboarding, and yeah,
Nice,
that was
man.
fun. That was
That's
new but
awesome.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to hate weightlifting for the longest time and then I just sort of started doing it and then now it's like I don't know if I love it, but it's just a routine, and
Yeah, yeah, I
uh,
need to get to that point. I
yeah.
was there, and then the gym closed because of COVID, and then
Oh,
I
okay.
thought, well, okay, I'll just buy a bike and go out on the bike
Yeah,
instead, and I did that a lot. But then, yeah, the weightlifting
yeah.
thing kind of went away.
The thing I miss is the sauna. So I would go into the sauna every day after, weightlifting and stuff, and I just
Yeah,
loved it. Like I loved the physical feeling, and then also you're just hanging out with some guys talking, so the social aspect.
yeah.
And it was just
Are they
great.
still
So
closed?
they're still closed.
Are they still?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They
So the
they
gym's
reopened
open,
here.
but the saunas are reopened over
The
there.
sauna also, yeah.
Oh, I got to get out there.
Yeah, when they opened, I immediately went with my girlfriend for a weekend. We put the kids at my in-laws, and we went like a
Nice.
full weekend.
To the saunas to just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, like a
nice.
sauna hotel where you drink beer during the day, and then you hop into a sauna and then back
Nice.
out.
That sounds great.
It
Oh
was.
man, I need to go see if I can find something like that out here. Um, well, anyways, this is a lot of fun, man. It was good to catch up. It's been a long time.
Yeah, Definitely.
And where's the best place for people to find you online and stuff like that?
On Twitter, it's Peter Jaap, so Peter and then Jaap, which is not my last name. It's actually the second part of my first name. So a lot of people in the Magento community always thought that Jaap was my last name, but it wasn't.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Well, thanks for having me, Kalen. See you next
All right.
time.
Cheers.